teardown of the Ultimate Ears EPICBOOM speaker. I will go through the tools that I will be using through the video. All of the tools can be found on our website. The links will be pinned in the description. Tools used are going to be a plastic sputter. I got a plastic wedge. I also have some metal pry tool. So the first thing we're going to do here is start by removing the battery, and to access the battery we need to remove this cover. The plastic sputter will not work here. This thing is on here pretty good, so we will start by using one of our metal pry tools. And we are just going to get under a little lip here and start peeling it up. We will have access to our 6 hex head screws. This is where the H2.5 bit will come in handy. So we're just going to start by removing all those screws. Okay, once we have those screws removed, we can grab our pry tool and lift up this cover. And here we can see our 3130 milliamp hour battery. This is going to give you up to 17 hours of playtime at around 40% volume. Remove the top button cover. So same thing, grab a pry tool and just pry underneath the rubber cover. And boom, we can see our buttons and our board. We also now have access to our 6 screws with another one hidden right down here. So don't make sure not to forget that one. So swapping over to the Phillips head here, I will start and I will remove these 7 screws. Okay, once we have it started here, we can go ahead and just give it a pull, and the fabric housing comes right off. Once we have that removed, we now have access to our main subwoofer as well as our 2 mid-high drivers. From here, to get into the rest of it, we have some screws right here, here, and here, as well as screws right here, and here, and here, and here. Once these 8 screws are removed, we will be able to separate this top half from this lower half so we can get access to the internals of the speaker. So let's go ahead and do that now. I'll start by removing these 2, and then I will move on to these 2. Okay, once we have these screws removed, you will need to remove these screws. This is where your longer screwdriver will come in handy. So I will use that and we will get in there. Once we have these 8 screws removed, we can separate the top half from the bottom half. There is this foam piece going around it, so you will need to separate the two. You can make a little cut going through it. I already did, so I already have it separated. I just did that so you didn't have to try and watch me separate this on camera. So once this is opened up, be very careful separating it. There are ribbons going from up here down to the main board inside. So let's go ahead. We have our ribbon connector here. They put glue over the tabs, so you will need to try and separate that before you can remove this ribbon cable. And you also have this connection here, which is connecting the 2 tweeters into the main board. So I will get this pulled out and get these 2 halves separated. Alright, and our halves are separated. From here, we will work on the top half, and we will take a look at our volume buttons, which are going to be underneath the rubber cover. To remove that, all you gotta do is just get something underneath. Once that's peeled back, we now have access to our volume up and our volume down, as well as our 3 LEDs. On the back side, we have a cable, a ribbon cable going from the volume buttons going up to the top buttons. So if you decide to remove this, you will want to make sure that you disconnect the ribbon cable in here. That way you avoid damaging the cable or the clips. So I will go ahead and get those disconnected, and all we're doing here is same thing as on the other one. There's these little tabs on there that need to be lifted up and before the cable can be removed. So I will go ahead and do that now. To remove our volume buttons, just to get this started, I am going to be using a metal pry bar. I'm going to be going very gentle. We don't want to bend this too much and risk cracking it. So I'm just going to be using this just to get the edge going, and then from then on, I will switch over to the plastic splitter. But you should be able to pull it right out. And with it out, we have our volume buttons. See, this is the red glue, and then this piece right here going around, this is the clip that you need to try and lift up before you can pull out the ribbon cable. So if you are not able to lift this clip up to release the cable, definitely do not try to just yank that cable out of there. Okay, next step, I am going to be removing the tweeters. I will be using my 2.5 Phillips head screwdriver. From here you will need a metal pry bar. Just get under the edge. And once you got it lifted, you can kind of just push it the rest of the way with your fingers. And that's one speaker out. This is the right side mid-high driver. To actually remove these, you will need a soldering iron to unsolder the wire connections. The way that I've been doing it is just holding it, getting this, heating up our metal here. Okay, and that's one tweeter free. Set it aside. And we can move on to the next speaker. Flip it over and same thing. We're just going to remove the 4 screws. Having the 2 drivers really does help improve the stereo separation and helps balance the larger subwoofer. So with these removed, we'll just go ahead and set these out of the way. You could pull out our speaker wires here. In order to do that, they are going through a rubber grommet that is helping seal these away so water can't get in. To pull these out, all you're going to do is just wedge. You take a metal pry bar and try and wedge these guys out a little bit here. There we go. All right, from there we have our tweeter wire free. Going from there, we can move on to the top buttons. These are held down with the same adhesive that our volume buttons were held down with, so this is going to be quite a bear to remove. So if you are going to remove this, I recommend using plastic tools because you don't want to damage the board and you don't want to bend it, put any super hard bends in it, because that could lead to cracking, and we definitely do not want that. So should you decide to remove your button board, just be very careful and make sure that all of your other connections are unhooked and it is free from everything else before you remove it. So we will go ahead and do this now. Okay. Now that we've finally got our board free here, we can see the two ribbon connections. One was going to the volume buttons, and the other was connecting down to the main board. As you can see, same thing here. They got the glue on the clips with the tabs that you need to pull up before you remove this. This is why I suggest if this needs to come off, you unhook everything first and do not try to stick your fingers in there to pull these off, because you could end up breaking the clip. Okay, that is our first top half completely disassembled. With the top half removed, we can now move on to the bottom half. We are going to start by removing our screws around the speaker here. Once we have the speaker out, we will be able to have access to our motherboard. In order to remove our plastic shell, you need to remove 7 screws. There are 3 right here. Excuse me, you need to remove 8 screws. There are 3 right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1 more behind the motherboard, way in the back here. So if you have a screwdriver long enough and thin enough to reach through here down to the screw, you can actually just go ahead and remove these screws, remove the 4 screws and this screw, and then you will be able to remove this whole housing. But because I do not have a screwdriver that will fit in here, I am going to be removing our main speaker first. So do that, grab your screwdriver, just remove these speakers or screws going around the outside. Okay, so I have gotten it loose. Once we have that loose, our speaker is free. I disconnected it already, but it is held in there, just clipped into here. Now we have our woofer, which is 120 millimeters. This guy is responsible for all the low frequency responses, meaning the bass. The driver this size definitely moves more air than the smaller full range speakers, which explains the depth that this speaker can produce. The magnet assembly on the back is definitely one of the heavier components inside this unit. This is definitely where a lot of the weight comes from, is this big speaker here. So with that out of the way, we now have access to our motherboard. There are 4 screws holding this motherboard in. I will use my Phillips head and remove those screws. with those screws out, our motherboard is now loose, except for the 2 cables going into it here. So let's go ahead and remove those before we pull out the motherboard. So make sure you squeeze the tabs on them. Those little release tabs on the pins. Sorry, this is going to be off camera, but it's hard to get on. And there's 2. So now that I have the 2 cables removed, I can remove the motherboard completely. This is the main board. This houses the Bluetooth module, the amplifier circuitry, the power management system, and the EQ processing. This is what enables the customizable presets on the whole thing. And this is, essentially the whole brains for the speaker. So I will go ahead and set this aside somewhere safe. From here, we now have access to our screw. It's hard to get on camera, but there is a screw right here holding this housing down. So I will grab my longer screwdriver here and remove these 7 screws. Okay, once we have those 7 screws removed, we can go ahead and separate the middle housing from the bottom half. And we now have one empty shell. So on the bottom part, we have our charger port PCB, which we will remove, and the battery board. So I will grab my screwdriver. Screws we will remove. Once these are removed, our charger port will be able to just lift right out. Okay, once those screws are removed, we can go ahead and pop this guy out. This uses a USB-C, which is always good to see from a modern repair and compatibility standpoint. Set that aside. From here, we can go ahead and undo this screw. And then this screw, which I believe is just kind of holding this back. Once those 2 screws are removed, we can remove the battery. And there we have it. This is our battery board. This goes from the battery to the motherboard. Alright guys, there we have it. So overall, the EPICBOOM has a rechargeable 3130 amp millihour battery, which is rated to last up to 17 hours. It has a 120 millimeter woofer for bass. We got our 2 45 millimeter mid-high drivers, as well as the Bluetooth hardware and extended range, and it really did have a solid internal frame with very heavy adhesive in certain areas, making it pretty difficult to get into. From a repair standpoint, the components are accessible, but strong adhesive does increase the complexity of safe disassembly. So should you decide to proceed with any repairs on this, just take your time and just make sure you're being careful.
Thanks for watching the video, guys. If you guys love what we do, please support us. You guys can click on the links that we have on the end screen. You guys can buy parts, sales, or service so we can continue to make great videos for you guys for many more years. Thank you.